Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about strong opinions. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how can you start to develop strong opinions about things that you do as a software engineer? This is the weirdest question. Uh, why would you want to develop strong opinions about software? There is a term that software developers use, which is basically a byword for annoying person, people we don't like, and that is opinionated. Opinionated person. Most software developers that I know, that like professionals and so forth, what they usually do is that they excuse themselves when they are about to say something that is opinionated. I actually had a conversation just yesterday with one of my coworkers who works in .NET, and I said that I know that this is not a popular opinion and it is an opinionated way of expressing it, but I really hate the clean architecture in the .NET world, for example. And he said, "Yeah, that's pretty opinionated." Yeah, I go, "Yeah, I know. I hate it." It's the same thing when I say that I don't really like Scala. It's also opinionated. I know for a fact that it's a language that is like it's can do all the things. I worked with it for years, so it's just my personal feelings on things. But I've never heard a question posed quite like this, where why would you want to develop strong opinions about things? Like maybe what we're trying to express here is a passion, like a strong opinion, because usually what I argue is that when you have a strong opinion about your software or like the things you're doing in your company, it has to do with emotions. Like you feel a certain way, or you have experiences that tell you certain things, and you have a strong sensation of that this is right, this is wrong, this is how you should do it, so forth and so forth, right? And developing those, it's one part experience and one part emotions. If you're this sort of lethargic person who does, or not necessarily lethargic, but let's just say more calm, open minded, and a little bit looser or relaxed, then you're never going to have a strong opinion. I know tons of developers who are very gifted, extremely good at their craft and so forth and so forth. They usually don't have a lot of opinions. They sort of just produce. Like some might refer to one or two of them as code monkeys or things like that, and I kind of go, yeah, like it that might be a good or bad thing depending. Like I prefer the term engine. They are the sort of you can be an engine without being strongly opinionated or having strong opinions, of course, but they're usually the guys and girls who kind of go, yeah, I understand what we're going to do, and I don't really care so much if we do A or we do B. Like they will sort of just roll with it. And me. If you ask me personally, I'd like to think that I am that sort of person in certain situations, and in other situations, I'm much more strongly opinionated. And that probably, as you can guess, has to do with the fact that I love the craft. And then, of course, I have experiences and things like that. The thing that I try to do, though, and I would like you to consider this, like if I'm going to sidestep and say that, and basically say I'm basically telling you I don't think that your focus should be to be strongly opinionated. I think that your focus should be on achieving quality results and being honest about your experiences in getting those results, and holding yourself and others accountable to proving why their opinion matters or why we should listen to it. Like the sort of thing where, as I was saying with the clean architecture thing, for me, for example, I of course have my ideas and opinions about why. Like it's not, it's not an arbitrary opinion that I just made up and then I feel that way or so forth and so forth. I of course have my reasons. And so what I argue is that you should focus on, if you do feel these things or you see things in a certain way, learn how to formulate a good argument. Present your argument to whoever you're dealing with, right? And then have a conversation about it. So once you have learned, so for example, if you have a discussion about a certain tool or a certain topic, just present why you think that this is a good idea or a bad idea. Try to convince people with your ideas. Try to keep it, as I said, rational and objective as much as possible. I'm the sort of person who goes, like, here are the reasons that I can see why we should do A or B, and then of course I always try to make sure that I keep my own subjective values out of it. I might mention, for example, that I feel this or I feel that or so forth and so forth, but I try to make that a secondary thing because I don't want to. I try to, as I said, keep myself honest, where I want to separate what is from an engineering perspective a good or a bad idea, like these concrete, very objectively true things, though as objective as they can be, right? Those things versus my own emotions and so forth, and structure my arguments that way. And then you will have to learn the hardest lesson there is, in my opinion at the very least, and that is to deal with when people don't agree with you or you won't get your way. Because the reason why strong opinions or being opinionated is a byword for annoying person is usually because they cause an argument as soon as they don't get their way. And that is a tough pill to swallow. Should not be that guy. To be able to basically be opinionated and have opinions, because I promise you one thing, like it is a little bit quote unquote a requirement to have at least some opinions about things if you're going to lead people. Leadership requires you to have at least opinions a little bit. If you want to be a manager, you don't usually, because that's, in my opinion, is a different thing. You just have to be very nice to everybody and make sure that everybody gets along, but you don't really have to lead per se. But if you're going to do that, you're going to have to get yourself some opinions. And even if you don't have opinions, just other people will have opinions, and you're going to have an opinion on their opinion. Because if you're going to make decisions, you're going to be accountable. So hopefully being accountable makes you think a little bit about what other people think is a good idea, and what then, of course, your opinion about that is. So what I want you to take away from this is that, well, I would never say, I would argue, don't become a person who has a lot of strong opinions about things. Try to have informed opinions. Try to derive what a good choice is or a bad choice is based on your experiences. And if you don't have experiences with this thing, again, ask other people to motivate why their opinion is the way it is. And you always find, guys, if you dig away enough, if you're really good at asking questions and try to make people elaborate on why they feel a certain way or why they have a certain opinion, you very quickly can figure out if there's something solid, if like, yeah, this person has done a few things and he or she, they have some really good arguments for their point they're making, or if it's just an emotional thing, it's just a preference. I hate those arguments. You will never get anywhere with me, ever, if I keep on asking you a little bit, okay, so why do you think we should do that? Okay, why is that important in this context? I keep on asking you a few questions to just see if I can figure out what the root of your argument is really. And it turns out that it's just the way I've always done it. Or I just like it. Like, if you can't give me anything but that, then you're out. Like, you immediately lose with me. I try to hold myself to the same standards. I very clearly try to start with, as I said, my argument is almost always structured like, first I can present to you the concrete of things that I consider to be objectively true that I can present to you, and then I might draw on a few like subjective things, like, I've always had an experience. A classic one is that I always find it better to create a little bit of like a rotation for updating documentation, because usually I find that software developers don't really like writing documentation, or they don't really like to update it and stuff like that. I might be in a room with people who are like super good at that, and like they always do it and they're really good at it, and I've just seen it so many times that it's not true necessarily, but it's been true enough times for me to sort of get like a bias for that people are a little bit lazy when they don't have to do something. So you might want to introduce a few things where they have to do things, where they feel that they have to do things. That's a completely like subjective thing. based on my experiences. And as I said, like, I have tools that I always found to be super complicated and like not so beginner friendly and stuff like that, even though there's tons of people who love them. That's opinionated stuff. And I try to even say that I'm a little bit opinionated, like, on this topic, and that's usually a good senior, I would argue, because when I hear it from other seniors, and they usually do it, not just me, practically every senior that is worth anything, in my opinion at the very least, again, being opinionated here, they will say something like, this is a little bit slightly opinionated, but, because basically people don't want to work with people who have strong opinions, who like force their will upon people and cause confrontations and stuff like that. So my suggestion is, as I said, try to really figure out why you feel a thing or don't feel a thing about whatever you're doing in your work. Present arguments that you can sort of stand behind, that are usually objectively true. It doesn't necessarily have to be facts, but things that seem reasonable. And then if you have opinions other than that, try to present them a little bit more casually, and be a little bit looser here. Because I can promise you this, strong opinions can be very good if you know how to communicate with people, and you know when to bend, when you won't be able to convince another person. Because if you create these like confrontations, that's when people start hating your guts, because you're too opinionated. And try to find that sweet spot, especially if you're going to be a leader. It's good to have some opinions about things that matter, and like where you know that you're gonna have to create some decision here or so forth, because sometimes not doing anything is worse than making something happen. But also know when it's time to fall back a little bit and say, okay, we're not going to make any headway here, so maybe we ask a manager or a third party or something like that. Or maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe this is, I like to say, if someone has a contrary opinion to mine, and I know that this is like, it doesn't really matter if they go with my choice or their choice, well, then I present my arguments, and if they are still super strongly opinionated, I go, okay, we'll do your thing. We can do my thing if it turns out that your thing doesn't work out, because it's like, I won't destroy my relationship with a coworker over something that isn't important. So be strongly opinionated when it's appropriate, and understand how to find the balance. Have a great day.